The principals, Chicago at the time had about a 55% graduation rate, and had a 55% graduation rate for decades, right? The principal's answer was, help us get kids out of school, help us graduate kids, right? And so the work that you're doing, right, which became the Network for College Success, became the To and Through Project, how to get kids to and through college, right, which first requires you to get them out of. Those are now national programs supported by the Gates Foundation, but they're changing the culture of many schools, right? The principals that you're going to be meeting today sort of brought that work to Newark last year, and the real point of today's panel is for us to learn with them about what they learned in that year about the crucial issue of getting freshmen off to a good start, right? So that's our business today, and we're going to let Ron Chalouisian, wherever he may be, right, give us some background on that. So, I am told that all I have to do here
Winning the Freshman Year, Improving High School Outcomes in Newark, moderated by Dr. Charles Payne. Research reveals the national crisis of ninth grade failure and its correlation to predicting high school dropout. The Freshman On Track Indicator identifies students as on track if they earn at least 5 full-year course credits and no more than 1 semester F in a core course in their first year of high school. On-track students are more than 3.5 times more likely to graduate from high school in 4 years than off-track students. The indicator is a more accurate predictor of graduation than students' previous achievement test scores or their background characteristics. Today, 4 Newark Board of Education principals share their stories. Dr. Jose Aviles, Dr. Liana M. Summy, Ms. Janique Florney Hamilton, and Ms. Sakina Pitts. Welcome. My name is Ronald Chalouisian, and I am the Executive Director of the Newark Trust for Education. I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce the work of these 4 principals, influenced by research and learning of the University of Chicago's To and Through project.
I'm very sorry about that.
I would like to focus my introductory comments on 5 areas: transition to high school, community of caring adults, culture of learning, data, acceleration, and just-in-time supports. My goal today is to outline a set of considerations, a group of questions to frame the discussion. While the work of ninth grade success has a framework, each principal has a set of conditions and a group of community members that are unique to their schools. Consequently, how they go about this work is nuanced. I hope that today's conversations reveal these nuances, and that while knowing that we will see a through line, I hope we will also understand the complexities at each site. All transitions require support. As young people move from known settings to new settings, they must have information to help them smoothly transition. Understanding expectations, knowing where to go for help, connecting with an adult who cares, and developing a group of trusted friends create a positive social, emotional, and mental space that maximizes young people's learning ability. What systems do schools have to ensure those just entering their community access the required information? What does the school do to ensure all students experience an immediate sense of belonging and can participate in a safe and supportive learning environment? Humans need connections. We need to know that people have our back. We need to know people care. Young people entering school are no different. What opportunities does the school provide students to make connections to the adults in the building? What are the expectations set for the adults to reach out, share who they are, offer support, and make themselves available to the group of young people entering the community? Every community has a way of interacting with its members and with new arrivals. What does the community believe? How do the members of the community speak about each other? Young people know they intuit what others think about them? How are they experiencing their entry into the 9th grade? Does every adult in the building welcome the new students? Do they believe that the community is stronger and smarter because of the new arrivals? Do new students get to know the adults, get to understand the strengths of each teacher, guidance counselor, and leader? What is the school doing to ensure a focus and emphasis on positive and encourage engagement? What is in place to mitigate frustration? Success comes from knowing what you have to do, having multiple opportunities to practice, having space to take risks, and having support necessary to move through the learning process. For success to occur, students need to understand the progress they are making. How is the school structured to provide students and families with information in an ongoing and meaningful way? What are the expectations of and support for teachers to create tasks that allow them to assess where each student is in relation to successfully mastering the materials and skills they need to be promoted to the 10th grade? How often is the data collected? What is the system for communicating the information among all the adults that share the responsibility of getting students to the point of promotion? What guardrails are in place to ensure this conversation remains focused on growth and development? Finally, we all understand that we are having this conversation because not all students enter the 9th grade with the tools necessary to be successful. Understanding that over time, it is critical that we as a community do the work to change this current reality, we need to meet the needs of the young people we are working with right now. There is a societal push toward remediation when we encounter young people who are not yet at the level we expect them to be. To meet the big picture goal of all students graduating high school with the tools necessary for viable post-secondary options, including being competitive in opportunities for ongoing learning and career success, as well as being engaged civically, we have to resist this temptation to remediate. We have to engage students in grade level material and provide them with the just-in-time supports they need to be successful. How are schools structured to accomplish this? I know that we are in for an informative and provocative conversation. I had the opportunity to meet with two of the principals on the panel prior to today's session, Dr. Summy and Ms. Florney Hamilton. I am humbled by the work that they do and the work that they share. They inspired me to work harder. I know that they will engage you thoughtfully and push you to think more deeply about the potential our young people have and about our responsibility to unlock that potential. Thank you, and I look forward to your interaction with the panel as they share their work.
Okay, well, thank you, Ron, wherever you may be. I get to say that I, like Ron, have thoroughly enjoyed working with this group of principals. Years ago, I came to the conclusion that those of us who study this program and that program, we're doing it wrong. The real truth is, in urban education, if there's a principal, it works. If there's not a principal, it doesn't work. Working with them has affirmed that for me. So I'm going to give you some brief introductions, and then we will turn to them, and they will tell you about the work they've been doing this year. Whoops. Dr. Liana Summy has spent the last 12 years with the Newark Board of Education, completed her Bachelor of Arts in English Literature at Montclair State, enrolled in the alternate routes teaching certificate there, began her teaching as an English teacher at Eastside High, promoted there to coordinator, then program director at Eastside for the innovative and alternative programming. Got her doctorate in educational leadership from Rutgers, where her dissertation focused on culturally responsive instructional leadership of urban principals. She is now the principal of one of our brand new high schools, Data Science. Give us the full
North School of Data Science and Information Technology, the longest school name in the district.
Okay. Sitting next to her, the Yoruba name would be Omowale, the child who returns home. She is the principal of a school from which she graduated. Both of our principals, next two principals, are returning home. So Principal Flournoy Hamilton, a Newark product of Newark Public Schools, University High, where her athletic ability won her a scholarship to Tuskegee University. She didn't do too badly at Tuskegee. I mean, she was magna cum laude, so she must have learned something from while she was down there. After that, a master's in social work from Rutgers, returned to University High in 2019 as the president, and during her 3 years there, they will all be talking about how their schools have changed on their tenure, but I just want to mention that during her time there, English language assessment scores rose by 26%, which is striking. And I also do want to mention that her school is the first Newark public school to offer dual enrollment with an historically black university. Her students can dually enroll at Howard University. She may want to say more about that. And Omowale number 2, returning to the school system from which she graduated, Chancellor Avenue School, graduating Chancellor Avenue School in 1990. Went to another historically black university, Morgan State in Baltimore, earning a BS in business. She is now an active member of a very interesting group, Educational Coalition of Off-School Grounds, which collaborates with in which she collaborates with like-minded school leaders around the country dedicated to closing equity gaps and creating real change in school culture and practice. And Principal Pitts, who is the principal of the Newark School of Fashion Design, which is exactly 1 year old now, right? Both of your schools are 1 year old. Will start us off. So why don't you all come up here?
So good morning, everyone. I am Principal Pitts, and I know that for the sake of time and to ensure that my colleagues have time to share their experiences with you, I am going to try to move through my portion of the presentation, as fast as possible, but ensure that you get the nuts and bolts of what happened at Newark School of Fashion and Design. So just a little bit of context about our school. New CTE school in the district, but when I speak of our school, I say CTE Magnet School. As a graduate of Science High School, a magnet school in this district, it is important for me to understand that not only are our students getting the technical skills that they need through construction and sewing and illustration and graphics and Photoshop and things like that, right? That is the big picture mission. We are powered by Parsons School of Design, which is the top global fashion school in the world, right? But that we are positioning ourselves in our infancy to be a magnet school. Currently, we are 4th in the district in terms of daily attendance at 96%, right? Our English data from last year exceeded the district. Exceeded the district. We are working aggressively as it relates to math, right? But when this work was brought to me from Dr. Riley in the Office of Teaching and Learning, I was ecstatic because what's unique about Newark School of Fashion and Design is that it only began with freshmen, right? So we were freshman specialists by default. Everything we did was around freshman work, right? Which I am coming out of this work. Had I not had a school with only freshmen, I don't know how Ms. Hamilton did it with having 4 grades and then being able to focus the attention on the freshmen. So I am eager to, hear how she did it, with a different set of circumstances. At any rate, do know that the slides that I'm going to move you through really quickly, conditions have to be set, right? So one of the things, collecting phones, no phones for focus, so that students could really focus on the work that was happening, right? Student goal setting conferences have to happen, right? And protocols for that. What does that look like? Students really looking at their report card, understanding where they are, right? And the consequence at Newark School of Fashion and Design for not doing your work at Newark School of Fashion and Design is getting it done. That's it. It's not, oh, detention, reflection, right? It is getting it done. We ensured that our staff members that were supporting freshmen were freshman specialists, right? And so that was really important to call it out, the math freshman specialist, the biology freshman specialist. So I will begin in terms of what was the problem, right? At the midpoint of quarter one, as a principal, I almost felt defeated. I ran a D's and F's report and I'm like, 236 D's and F's? So what are we doing wrong, right? Come to find out in our HSLT meeting that other schools were in the similar situation, right? We're just coming out of the pandemic. You know, we need to ensure that freshmen are focused. That's a big transition coming out of 8th grade, going into high school. So we also noticed too at the midpoint of quarter two that there was this high number of D's and F's, right? Do know that the work that we did this year was an investment. And so at the end, you'll get to know what the ROI or the return on investment was. So we came up with this action plan that we needed to lower the number of D's and F's to as close to 0 as possible, right? So at the midpoint, you get a progress report, you see where students are, but they have a half a quarter to rectify, you know, what Power School is looking like at that point, right?
Do you mind, I'm sorry that we came a little late. We have a group of 8 mostly freshman students. Would it be possible for you to pause and contextualize to them where you are in the conversation?
Yeah, so can we do that can we do that in the loop back at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Only for the sake of time. Our session is gonna end and we wanna make sure. All right, so thank you for that and understanding. So we needed to ensure basically that students get 40 credits at the end of the year. That is the big overarching you know, goal, is that every student gets 40 credits. So that in high school, when you go to the next grade, some students come back and they think that they're a sophomore. They're a sophomore by name, but they're not a sophomore by the number of credits. So they're either trying to do credit recovery or they have to go to summer school, right? So the freshman success indicator says 2 things. One, that there's a certain number of credits that students need to have by the end of the year. And 2, that they should not get F in more than 2 quarters in a year, right? So think about it. If I get an F quarter 1 in biology and an F quarter 2, what continuum am I on until June, right? So the big problem was that at the middle of quarter 1, we see that students are like, they're failing. So based on our D's and F's, we created a freshman support document. It was given to each student. So this is a big undertaking on the teachers. For every student that they teach, they have to go into Power School and give the students a 1-pager that says what assignment it is that they weren't doing well in, or if there was a quiz that they may have needed to retake, right? This is what that document looks like, right? So this is created at Newark School of Fashion and Design. If I'm a student in the middle of quarter 1, I might receive 3. Maybe I got one from my biology teacher, my math teacher, and my English teacher. Wherever I am failing, this was a document that we gave to students, this support document, right? So from these sheets, they can begin working on completing the assignments that they needed to complete. At the end of quarter 1, we were able to lower that 236 D's and F's down to just 40. And the vast majority of them were D's and not F's. I think at the end of quarter 1, only 11 of 100 students had an F in something. So outcomes and findings were that at the mid of quarter 1, we had 236 D's and F's. We lowered it to 46. At the end of quarter 2, we had 52 D's and F's. But by June 2022, in doing this work consistently at the midpoint of every quarter, along with student support conferences, 100% of Newark School of Fashion and Design students got their 40 credits. We left no child behind, whether they had an IEP, whether they were an ESL student. Every single student got their 40 credits. What does that do for you as a school? when you are able to wash, rinse, repeat, right? So if we're able to do that again for every freshman and now every sophomore, by the graduating class of 2025, I almost ensure that I have 100% graduation rate, right? So because students didn't have to go to summer school, they were able to engage in sustainable fashion camp. We were able to get them internships paid by the city of Newark, right? And they were very clear in their goal setting conferences. One of the questions that came out of that is, what are you doing for summer? So to me as the principal, it was our job that if you didn't know what you were gonna do, to get them focused in terms of what is out there for you to do, how can we support you? But the crux of the work was that through the Freshman Success Consortium and the work of Dr. Payne at Rutgers, and holding our hands through sessions, we were able to move through this work. It was exciting work. And whenever your return of investment is something like 100% of students get all of their 40 credits, it is most rewarding. And so that's what I wanted to share.
Hold on, I think it may be university next. Is that what I said? Oh, you didn't do this slide.
There was some data tracking too along the way, so I knew exactly which
so
students had like 2 Ds, 1 D, 1 F, so we tracked students as well.
Thank you, Principal Pitts. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Liana Sumney, and I am the principal of the Newark School of Data Science and Information Technology. And like Principal Pitts said, we are another brand new CTE magnet high school in the district. But I wanted to start just by contextualizing a little bit about myself, and then how that connects to the context of the school and how we approach this work at Data Science. So when I started my career in Newark, I started at an alternative high school. And all of the work that I did there really shaped my mindset about how to approach any work that I did as a leader with any type of student. It didn't matter if they were in an alternative setting, if they were high achieving, if they're a magnet student. That was the mindset, because to me it's about every individual child, no matter where they're coming from. As the mayor said, it's about meeting them where they're at. And so in my experience in this alternative high school, I was considered an advisor. So I was an English teacher, but that wasn't my primary role. My primary role was as an advisor to a group of students to make sure that that group of students was successful no matter what the conditions around them were. So that was my responsibility. I had to teach the standards, I had to do all of that, but I had to make sure that my students were.
Can you turn
Okay. I had to make sure that my students were able to meet any opportunities or challenges that were put in front of them. And so that experience really shaped me as an educator, because I was with a group of students from when they were freshmen all the way up until they graduated as their advisor. So they would see all different teachers for content throughout those 4 years, but I always had that solid core connection with those students. So I was responsible for that outcome of them graduating and then seeing that their life trajectory went in the direction that they wanted it to, for them to be successful. And so in different leadership roles that I had at Eastside High School, where I worked in alternative programming, and then at the central office, which is where I worked for 3 years, I had that same mindset. And then I got a global perspective of things that were happening in other high schools, in different demographics, and then all of these different approaches to the work. And that's where I met Dr. Payne, was when I was in the central office working for the high school leadership team. And I actually had the opportunity to kind of get a perspective of the freshman on track work at that point. And I did go to Chicago with Dr. Payne and a group of principals from Newark to see how Chicago had implemented this work, how they used the research, how they had made it a systemic change in a huge school system, right? And so I visited a high school and I saw it in real time, and I talked to students out there, and I said, wow, and at that point I was working on my doctorate, and I was like, I want to be a principal, and so when I do get that opportunity, I want to do this kind of work with my students. So I felt extremely fortunate that I had the opportunity, like Principal Pitt said, to open a high school that only had freshmen, because now I could focus the work on that group of students. I gave you a little bit about my background, but about data science. So what are we? We are a high school essentially preparing computer science professionals, right? We teach the data sciences, we teach computer science, we teach information technology. But when I talk to students, when I talk to parents, when I talk to community, I don't really talk about, yes, we're a computer science school. What our mission is to prepare technology leaders who are change agents, right? Technology is everything. It's become a huge part of our world. There's no denying that. In fact, we got through the pandemic because of technology. And so what I stress to my students is Black and brown students, which I want to stress that, especially since we're talking about equity today, you have to be able to be a part of the conversation when it comes to technology, when it comes to things that we are not prepared for, problems in society we're not prepared for, jobs that don't exist yet. So we're teaching skills. We're teaching students how to navigate systems and how to interact with people. That is really the focus for us. And so the Freshman on Track work was hugely connected to that. So some of the strategies that we put into place, as Principal Pitts said, our whole school was the 9th grade team, right? Everybody had to have a stake in it because all of the teachers, content-wise, were teaching freshmen. So our academic meetings became our 9th grade meetings, right? That conversation was ongoing. We started the year with a book study of The Make or Break Year by Emily Crone Phillips, which really dives into the story of Chicago. And why I felt that was so important is because people are moved by stories. Data is important, but stories are what connects with people. And so my teachers, I had a mix of teachers, new teachers, teachers who've been in the district, teachers who were coming from other districts, right? They're coming with all these perspectives and mindsets. I needed them to get a picture in their head of why this was so important and what the capacity could be if they had understood what these experiences are. So as they read through the book and they read the stories of individual students from Chicago, they made the connections to their students. And it made some of the asks and the work a lot easier for us to do. When it came to the actual work of the 9th grade team, we did a lot of the things that Principal Pitts said. We developed a very vast master data tracker, which we called our learning plans. And it had an individual focus on each student, and it collected things like the academic data, so a tracking of GPAs, a tracking of the current assessments. We have a lot of assessments in Newark, right? So we would put all of all of that data into that document. It would track attendance. It would track behavioral referrals. So teachers have to write something up about an incident in class, in a Google form, automatically filters in there, and then you can sort it by child, right? So then you can see each student, all of these different metrics about how they're doing. Paints a really broad picture for conversations between teacher teams, administration, the student support team, parents, and so on. We also ran into the Q1 crisis where so many students were failing, and so we started to tier, right, our academic interventions. Every teacher was responsible for creating a plan of how they were going to address different groups of students, and then whether it was this student simply needs to make up assignments, this student needs a referral for certain services depending on where that student was. And then the collaboration in the conversations of the 9th grade team, talking about what are the trends that I see with this student that you may see also, what's working with you that I haven't tried yet, right, and having that conversation. And then within those interventions, things like tutoring, individual one-on-one supports became really important. We had a conversation about equitable grading practices, and when I talk about the teacher mindset, that was one of the things that came up a lot, was teachers didn't want to continue to give students opportunities to make up work, right? And so we had a real conversation about that, and we looked at research. We looked at some of the work that Doug Reeves has done around grading. And if you give a 0, right, there's really no way a child is going to recover from that 0 because it's mathematically unfair. And the district has moved in this direction, which I believe is the right direction because, again, it's about equity. And so that was a difficult conversation, but it was one that we had, and it really did help to get teachers in the mindset of let me give my students more opportunities. You know, there's always a story behind why a student isn't doing work. Students don't go to school because they want to fail. You know what I mean? There are things that are going on. We talked a lot about not just academics, but the affective, right? And so that ties into my last point. Understanding where students are coming from, understanding what's going on at home, building a relationship with the family, knowing who your students are as human beings. You can't just go off of how a student performs on an assessment and think that that's telling you everything. You have to know the student as an individual. Teachers have to know the students as individuals. So we had that conversation. And then as a school, we really focused on acceleration and enrichment. So where students were doing well, we said, listen, you can do more, right? You should be taking geometry in the summer so that you can take Algebra 2 next year, right? And that whole thing about lifting all boats, that's what began to happen. The students would see opportunities are opening up. I'm not a part of it. Why am I not a part of it? Well, maybe I need to step it up, right? So the idea of acceleration really does lift everyone. And so just some of the impacts at the end of the year, 91% of our students passed all classes. We only had one student who failed more than 3, so in the district, if you fail, you can make up 2 classes in summer school, right? So that one student was what we would consider a student who had not met the 40 credit requirement. So it's not 100%, which was the goal, but for us, that's something we can work with, right? One student now that we know we have to really put in targeted interventions and to make sure that they're on track by next year. One of the things that I would say overall is that the work really made sure that we were able to develop a supportive school culture, and that there were strong relationships between staff and students, and between students and themselves, right? And that idea of, you know, seeing your peers doing well raises the expectation for yourself. And so the fact that students know that there is always an adult who is going to be on them, you know, it may not be that you have the greatest relationship with your math teacher, but like I said, I was an advisor. We have advisory at my school. So there are teachers who are cohorted with students that will be with them until they graduate. So Mr. Cusick is going to be on his students this year, next year, until they graduate, right? And so they know that Mr. Cusick is not going to let them fail math, even though Mr. Cusick is a social studies teacher. And so over time, those expectations and those mindsets developed. Some of the challenges, like I said, were the adult mindsets, which is why the readings, the professional learning, the conversations and the dialogue was so important. Training staff, like getting staff, like I had staff coming in who never knew how to use Google, right? So now we're talking about all these data trackers and inputting call logs and things like that. So that took a lot of work. We had to leverage the system. So huge part of this is just putting the systems into place and then constantly monitoring them and making adjustments. And then finding time, right? So finding time to get this work done is a challenge, and you know, I'm excited to hear from Principal Hamilton about how she does this with a much larger school with multiple grade levels, because now the challenge for us is replicating this with our sophomores this year and eventually our juniors and our seniors to make sure that as our students go through the grade levels, they maintain. And then just making sure to manage the individual outliers. And finally, just some takeaways that systems, like I said, are extremely integral, putting the systems into place and monitoring them. The mindsets, I would say, is the most important thing, the mindsets of the adults and also the mindsets of the students. We talk about mindsets with our students all the time. Like I said, replicating for new students, and then the sustainability. Oh, and that's that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Is it afternoon yet? No, right? Morning. All right. I'm Principal Flanoy Hamilton from University High School, home of the Phoenix, of course, and super excited to be here. First, yes, Phoenix, I saw you back there, young man. So first, I want to say, you know, University is my baby, not because I'm now the principal of University High School. I had the pleasure of attending University as a scholar, as a student, and as a scholar athlete. and it helped to shape me and make what I am doing today possible, right? The realities of the school is that University is traditionally a magna high school and still considered a magna high school in Newark. At one time, the school was not only one of the top in the district, but also one of the top in the state, right? Receiving recognition and all these other great things. And as a product of that, I specifically knew why, right? Because I benefited from all the systems of support that were within the school. Having returned to University as the principal, for me to see some of the declining realities of the school served as my motivation to do better. I went on an interview for a general position in Newark Public School. I wanted to come home, I wanted to be a part of Newark Public Schools, and I happened to get an interview for University High School. There were 3 other schools who apparently ranked me #1 for my interview, but the man upstairs made it possible for me to return home to University High School. And so for me, I bring not only just the reality of educators that we want our scholars in schools to win and to be the best, but that I also had the reality and being driven by the reciprocal, for me, relationship that I had with the school. The school that gave to me, it's my responsibility to give back to the school. And not only through just University High School, but through each and every one, I call them my scholars, but they're my babies. And when I look in their eyes every day, I am held accountable by them. I'm not held accountable by my teachers, by my colleagues, by the superintendent, by my mom back at home. I'm held accountable by the scholars whose faces I have to look in every day. And when I look at their faces, the only thing I desire for them is their success. And so this whole idea of coming back and trying to rebuild and restore, like the University High School Phoenix, right? We're the home of the Phoenix rises despite any challenges. And so for me, it started with mindset. It started with mindset of the staff, scholars, and our families. So let's take for the staff, again, we're rebuilding. So we have a staff who have been at University, and here comes this new principal, right, with these great ideas about us rising. And not everybody had already risen in the work they were doing. And so we have to start with mindset. So we started shifting the mindset of the staff by saying, listen, first, you have to understand, and we just heard from the great Baruti Kafele, and I rely on his statement often, I am the #1 determinant of the success and or failure of my scholars, period. Right? And so if every adult walked into the school with that mentality, I have 2 children at home that I birthed, I have 1 that I adopted. I'm the #1 determinant of the success and or failure of my scholars, of my students, of my children. And so I need the staff to understand that first, right? That is not only your responsibility to sit in front of students and give them the information, hope they receive it, and if they don't, oh well, right? But it's the responsibility of you to say, what do I need to do? For a Johnny and Amari, who are my children at home, I will turn over everything in this room to ensure that they are successful. And I feel that most parents will do that. So how, then, if I'm responsible for the success and or failure of these students, am I taking that same concept and mentality into the work I'm doing with these students? I will turn over every leaf until these scholars are successful. Because I think my colleague just said, each scholar walks into our room with a different experience, different challenges, different successes. It's our responsibility to help them see that they can be successful. So during our freshman summer bridge, that's where the work starts, right? Not only do they start to get to know who we are, we get to know who they are, right? We're looking at our scholars, we're assessing them through, trying to see what the needs are. So although it doesn't look like always a formal come sit down in my office conversation, we are assessing our scholars all the time. And right, sometimes we only use assessment data. So I'm looking at how they did in math, and I'm looking at English, and I'm looking at their courses, but who's looking at me to see what I really need to help me develop and grow? And that's, for me, what the biggest thing about orientation for freshmen is. Who are our scholars and what do they need? And how do we begin setting those things up so that they can be successful? So this year, one of the things we did from what we learned last year is that we also pulled some of our scholars during some of our workshops and stuff we had with all the freshmen. We had some deliberate conversations set up with some of our helping professionals who that is their primary responsibility. So our counselor, freshman level counselor, our social worker, things like that. So for me, again, the mindset of the staff first, but secondly, by the mindset of the students. So again, orientation, what happens with them, right? Our core values at university is to rise, responsibility, integrity, service, and excellence. And how do we get our scholars to adopt the idea that no matter what my challenge was in elementary school, middle school, or whatever, and we have some who came in top students, but we have others who came in behind the grid, lower level students who could do the work, but just needed to be motivated to understand that they can do it. So a lot of it, to me, in my experience, my social work background that Dr. Payne talked about, is really helping people understand that I truly, honestly wake up every day knowing that every scholar can be successful. And that it's just a matter of sometimes, and most of the time, removing these barriers out of their way and helping them see and believe in their ability to be successful, right? We always think we have to be the answer. I'm not the answer, you're the answer. But I can help you find and discover, right, the answers within. And so for us, a lot of it is, again, having these conversations with students. Every morning, I'm on the morning announcement trying to give a motivating message. During the pandemic, which was my first year as principal at university, we got interrupted by a pandemic. So my scholar said, we miss hearing your morning messages. So what did I do? I didn't have an Instagram. My scholar created one for me because I was old and I didn't know anything about it. I was Facebook friendly. But I used that as a vehicle to continue to leverage the motivation and the reality that they can be successful. And then lastly, our families. How do we shift the mindset of families who sometimes tell their children in my presence, you are going to be successful. You're this, and this. And how do you shift the mindset even of our families to continue to push and drive our students to success? So we get staff mindset, scholar mindset, parent guardian mindset. All of those things are extremely critical before you can even do the heavy lifting and helping everybody that's in the system, right, understand that these scholars can be successful and they have the answer. I will talk about the key looping of staff with scholars. So we had, like my colleague said, we have a whole school. So we have 7th at the time through 12th grade that I have responsibility for. So it really wasn't about just the freshmen for me. That was a focus of the work we did together, but I have a whole school to consider. And so we tried to begin setting up systems that were not in place where we did some key staff looping with our students. So our school counselor, they move up each year with their grade. Why? Because they have a certain level of familiarity with the scholar circumstances, with the scholar interests, academic strengths, academic challenges, and can leverage that in supporting and putting in interventions. The grade level lead. 2 of my administrators are here. I just want to give them a shout out, Ms. Jones, our Dipsy of Science, and Ms. Wilson, Athletic Director and Health and PE Chair. So they serve as grade level leads. And they don't lead their student, right, when they loop with them. So you have a counselor, you have a grade level lead. And thirdly, then you have your class advisor. So you have 3 people that loop with the students and move up with them, that have this level of familiarity, a relationship, because we know the relationship is the biggest leverage in motivating students. And that impact to me has been significant because you don't have to, anybody have to relearn where the students are, we kind of know, and you can use that with the grade level team. Because high school is so specific to content as they go up, it was really challenging to move up teachers with students just because of the content requirements. But these key people serve on grade level teams. So what the function of the grade level team is really important, right? There's always been grade level teams in Newark. We added success team. And specifically related to mindset, we added grade level success team to help people understand you're not a grade level team to just sit around and talk about the challenges students are having. You are here to ensure that they are successful. So how can we work together? If this young man is having success with a student and I'm the other teacher, what is he doing? And how can we have conversations and build on ways that we can leverage each other in ensuring that scholars are success? So the grade level success team, we, like my colleagues, we have a data tracker. Whose data is this? Who's passing? Who's successful? But the key is how do you use that information? Not only that, also identifying a helping adult, we call it a champion, grade level champion for each scholar. So who's partnered with an individual scholar? Sometimes it's coaches, sometimes it's a security guard who has a great relationship, whatever works. Sometimes it's me. And I know Ms. Jones, one of my staff members, she gets on me because she's like, the kids respond so differently. And I heard it upstairs, right? You keep making investments into scholars so that almost whatever you say, they're receiving it. And so I just keep making investments. In the morning, I'm out front and I see them when they come in. The ones who are having difficulty, yesterday morning, I had one young lady, she had to welcome me in my office because I noticed immediately she was upset. Something happened with her mom at home. Here we go, that's an investment. She knows Ms. Hamilton is gonna notice when something's wrong with me, right? And she's gonna help to do something about it. So the grade level champions and mentors are extremely important because you have a person who the student feels in the building is here to champion for them and help them be successful, which in some instances they have not seen and don't see enough of. Enrolling in the RISE Mentor program, so again, university traditionally being a magnet high school, but not necessarily getting all magnet students, we had to then look at what partnerships can we leverage to support our students. The RISE Mentor program is a partnership with Montclair State University and Mentor North, specifically for our freshmen. And with that program, we were able to identify freshmen who come in below our expectations as a magnet school, right, and particularly engage them in this program, where they receive a mentor who is a college junior or senior at Montclair State University, paired with the scholar, along with all of this exposure around our core values. That's why it's called RISE in correlation with the Phoenix Rising. Our core values, college and career readiness, right? And exposure to college campuses because they travel to Montclair State as a part of the program. So it gives an extra layer of support that we may not have had at the school level, but that we reached out to our community resources to bring in. Now it's expanded. They were just sending me pictures of right now the Saturday program. It's RISE, but also now we have Sister to Sister, an alumni program, mentoring program. Both these programs primarily function on Saturdays, and currently I have 60 students at the building receiving their mentorship and program, which if high schoolers are getting up on Saturday morning to come in 10 o'clock, right? We give them 2 hours, 10 to 12, and actually invest in themselves, that's a big deal. So, and I don't make them go. The young ladies, they, oh, you're gonna remind them? I don't need to remind them. They were here last time, they saw the benefit, they will be back. And I tested that theory this week. Fortunately, it worked. But, you know, you have to also give them that level of ownership as young people. It teaches them how to, you have to go out after and grit for what you want. So that's kind of where we get the enrollment in the RISE Mentor program and developing interventions that will be most useful in supporting scholar success. So again, within the building, what exists? Those grade level champions, those conversations, those regular grade level team meetings. And we went a step further this year. We're actually assigning duty periods to support the grade level work. So now not only do the grade level teams meet after school, you have some people on the grade level who are specifically assigned to follow up with any of the student needs. So if we need a parent conference, if we need just an individual goal setting conference with a student, hey, let's reflect on what's going on. Let's see what we can do, and let's see how we can engage with one another to move it forward. And then of course, our data tracker still looking at how successful we will be. Everything is not streamlined and where it's going to be, right? We're moving in direction and improving, to me, every day, but every year as well, right? You get stronger. So my freshmen have served as a model for the sophomores, for the juniors, for the seniors in this approach. But specifically for our freshmen, you can go ahead. Thank you. To celebrate the wins, again, positive call competition is something we're rolling out. Like you have to, when I go in on Saturdays for the mentor program, I'm picking up the phone and I'm making calls. Because I don't want only our scholars to feel success. Sometimes you making a call home for a freshman has a parent feel successful for the first time that they've ever, and I hear it all the time, this is the first time I've ever received a positive phone call home from school, right? To me, that's a big deal. But it's also an issue that we have to be intentional about addressing. Because now not only is the scholar seen as successful in school, you start shifting the mindset where it is challenging to make sure that that scholar is equally receiving that view from home. And again, it's not all scholars, but it does exist where the family dynamic and components, right, will drastically impact what's happening with the scholar. Also, the individual scholar celebrations. So how are the grade level champions meeting with scholars, letting them know they're successful, celebrating their success. Hey, I remember last year, one of our freshmen, every marking period, B, C student, we started meeting every Monday morning. She would come in and we would meet. Last marking period, she was on the principal's list. And it was like such a big deal. So I brought her in for breakfast one morning, like just to really blow up how excited I was to see her progress. Because for her, being a B or C student was okay. For me, I saw an A student in front of me. So how do I leverage that? So for a lot of this, I think is really recognizing the talents, gifts, and intellectual ability of our scholars and helping to push them forward. The monthly scholar and staff convocations to celebrate those scholars as well, and then of course positive rewards and strip. For me, it's really about celebrating the small wins because that's what creates big wins. So we can talk about data all day long, right? If my scholars don't really understand that they can be successful and take that level of success with them beyond, right, there's some limitations. So we specifically have increased our dual enrollment opportunities at University High School. Dr. Payne mentioned being the first school to partner with a historically black college and university, Howard University, to actually offer our students that opportunity. Now we have Brown University, which is an Ivy League school, right? We have NJIT, Montclair, all of these schools, and letting our freshmen know that this is where you're going. By junior year at university, I expect you to be taking college level courses. It's not really optional. I expect you to do this. So there's Essex County, dual enrollment. Now we're looking to graduate our first class next year that have actually enrolled in Essex County college courses, right? But our freshmen know these things exist. So you also have to, we talk about remediation all the time, right? But it's not only about remediation, right? I honestly know if you just looked on paper, you would see some of the students that, oh, maybe they shouldn't have these opportunities. But then they go and they experience, and you see them experience success. We're taking a trip to Princeton and Yale in the next 2 weeks. And so my team gave me a list of students who should go to the trip. So I look over the list, and I see these are, you know, my top 10, top 25 in each class. So I put it back to them, and I just said, I just need you to rethink the list. I didn't say why. I just said, I need you to rethink the list. So then they rethought, here you go, here's another list. Still, for at least some of I said, are there any students in the building that we can expose to this opportunity and it can be a life-changing opportunity for them? That they can see themselves at Princeton. That they can see themselves as a scholar who has an opportunity to be at Yale. And so how do we continue to make this exposure? So what does all of this do collectively? Impact. Our data, 26% increase, right? English language arts, key. Because for me, reading and writing, if you can do that and do that well and master that, you can access anything as far as the intellectual ability, right? Attendance up, graduation rates up. So the freshmen, to me, are gonna have even a greater impact of what all of this will do for them. But like Dr. Summy said, it starts with mindset. To me, at the center of it is the staff mindset, scholar mindset, and also parent and guardian mindset, right? It starts there, and to me, that's the heart of it. But as educators, again, we have to see ourselves as the number one determining factor of the success of our students, and then we put systems in place, of course, to support and be that safety net around them. I guarantee the scholars will surprise you every time, or not surprise you at this point. But that is what it is. That's what university has done for me. That's what we hope to do for our freshmen as we continue to strengthen our system. You know, there's always challenges, resources, finding time probably is the biggest challenge, because I always, and my team that's here will tell you, I always want to do more because I always feel like we can do more. But I also know the realities of the limitations of time, you know, not enough staff to do all the work, honestly. And so how do we continue to leverage some of the partnerships that we have and also create more? And also just continue, lastly, to make all of this systemic. So how do you ensure that the training that teachers are getting coming in, right, they adopt this mindset and they're able to work through it? The systems, and looking at data regularly, week by week, to say whether it is officially sitting down with a grade level success team meeting, or just obviously knowing we have to look at our students who we are the grade level champions for and continue to see where they need supports and put those things in place and be really intentional about it. And then lastly, understanding that each scholar is different. So the needs exist in different ways, right? But for me, there's never a closed door that can't be opened. And so we just attempt repeatedly to make sure we open that door so that we continue to see some of the successes that we have had. So thank you very much.
Thank you for reminding me. It's just a wonderful group of principals, and I'm glad the students have access to this kind of leadership. A couple of things very quickly. To our friend from it's Global Urban Studies. Newark School of Global Studies. Welcome. And you probably figured it out by now, but I would just say it, that this is a panel about the research on the importance of freshman year for understanding what will happen to young people later in their lives, one. And two, about a group of principals who have committed themselves to making freshman year more successful for more of their students. So that's the overall theme. The other thing I want to say is the principal from Barringer could not be here for some reason. But all I will say, one of the things that I had wanted him to talk about is that he created a class for freshmen called Freshman Ethics, right? And in that class, they talk about what freshmen are going to. I think some other principals are thinking about doing that. But it's been a successful innovation for him in the sense that his freshman classes used to be highest number of Fs, highest number of disciplinary reports. They are now the lowest number of Fs and the lowest numbers of disciplinary reports. So it's been quite a turnaround. So I know we can only have a few minutes left, but are there a few questions?
I'll start. One of the things that we implemented at North School of Fashion and Design, did everyone hear his question? How do you ensure that the relationship between freshmen and other students in the building, is a solid relationship? And so that's a really good question, young man. So thanks for posing that question. At Newark School of Fashion and Design, we started a process called Newark School of Fashion and Design Student Success Partners. So we paired up every freshman with every sophomore. Next year will be the first year that we have juniors in the building. So I don't know if we'll pair freshmen with a sophomore and a junior, or if the tradition will become that it will just be freshmen and sophomore, right? Freshmen and sophomores. I actually have some photos of them. So we created a space for them to receive support. This just happened the other day. So during the lunch period, you have to find your partner. Sometimes you have to give students like a frame of reference. So we gave them 2 questions that they could use if they didn't have any anything to discuss, so that they're not just sitting there looking at each other. Simple questions. What's going well? What's not going well? That can open up a world of dialogue, right? So I went to sit in with 2 students, and she said what's going well is most of my classes. She said what's not going well is this, because I don't really know what to do with my partner. So I said, are you having any challenges in any class, right? So she said, yeah, my fashion class. I don't know how to thread the bobbin. I'm just all over the place. So Jaden Yancey, who was her partner, said, I had the same problem last year. I did not really like my construction class. So he said, this year the sewing machines have lights. Turn your light on whenever the thread is cut, so he walked her through the process. And he said, if there's ever anything that you don't really know, I found that just pulling out my notebook and just taking some notes on it helped me. And so I watched in that moment how an upperclassman can support a freshman. So that's one of the things that we do, is create space and time for freshmen to meet with the other students, and so that they have another layer of support in the building.
Yeah, it's so funny because we did something very similar where we called it our Circuit Spark Buddies program. And essentially we have our sophomores adopt a freshman. So we gave them an opportunity to kind of have a meet and greet. And we didn't match the students. We didn't pre-match them. We kind of organically just let them get to know each other. During our summer bridge program and during our orientation for freshmen, we had the sophomores present. So I told the sophomores, you're running the bridge program. Yes, we got the teachers doing the activities, but I need you to be showing the freshmen around, talking to them, building the relationships. And even before the school year started, back in like June, then freshmen were like, I can't wait to meet the incoming freshmen. Like, when are they gonna start? When are they gonna be in the building? Like, the kids were excited because they were the only class in the school, so now they know there's another grade coming in. They wanted to be those leaders and those mentors. So we kind of took advantage of that. Another thing that we did is we have AP classes, we have other opportunities where a lot of times students feel challenged, they feel overwhelmed. And so what we did is we kind of created study groups where some of the upperclassmen could meet with underclassmen or even their own peers within their grade level to talk about, you know, their successes or their challenges. Just like Principal Pitts said, when I took that class, these are some of the things that I did. Or listen, I know what kind of teacher that, you know, I know what their expectations are. Here's how you can do really well in her class. That kind of thing. Just, again, creating spaces for students to talk authentically and get to know each other is really important.
I agree wholeheartedly with both of them. I think traditionally university, I think the pandemic created some spaces, but we always talk about how our juniors and seniors should be our leaders in the building. And so extending that olive branch from them to the younger students is a huge component of what success should look like. What we did with our RISE program this year is that the students who were in RISE are supposed to transition out as sophomores. But instead of transitioning out, we agreed with Montclair State and Mentor North that they would stay in. And that those sophomores would then bring along a freshman, right? Where now it's a triad really of a mentor and support group that exists for the sophomore, the freshman, and the junior. But the upperclassmen, they have a sense of pride and they want to do. And I think our goal is to give them more to do. So like at orientation in May for the new freshmen, our students are there. They're excited about being there. They were so excited about the energy that the freshmen and their parents brought into the school. They're like, when is the next one? Like, when is the next one? Because they felt the level of ownership. But to me, one of the other things we can do in addition to what my colleagues mentioned is also just those convocations. Creating those spaces where, as a community, you celebrate together, right? Whether it is, we just had Hispanic Heritage Month, so a big assembly during that time, where everybody's collectively together, learning how to cheer each other on, learning to support one another. Like those spaces and creating those spaces intentionally, we celebrated those who had certain scores on this. And even not only that, but we call it the phenomenal Phoenix, right? Or rising Phoenix, those who may have started here, but now is here. And so being intentional about celebrating those things collectively and school-wide, I think is a huge push, and just building community within the school as a whole, but not just obviously pulling freshmen, but just looping everyone in together around, you know, celebration and community.
Thanks. Those are wonderful responses. I think we're going to end it now, otherwise you're going to wind up missing lunch. Thank the panel one more time.